So, I'm the driver's son. So what? The richest girl in town was obsessed with me until a soul from another dimension hijacked her body. The day my dad came to pick me up, she blocked the door to the Rolls-Royce and announced to half the campus that I was nothing more than her family's hired help. I didn't say a word. I just called her mother. Mrs. Carrington, I don't think Paige wants to see me anymore. 3 seconds later, my dad's car was back. The dimensional traveler stared at me, her world collapsing. Why will my mother protect you? I just smiled. Have you ever wondered why you spent all those years chasing me in the first place? Nathaniel Cross, you're just my family's driver's son. What gave you the right to ride in the same car as me? Paige Carrington slid into the back of the Rolls-Royce before I could. She rolled down the window, swatting my hand away from the door handle as a sneer twisted her perfect features. Get your hands off my car, she shouted, her voice loud enough to turn heads. I stared at her dumbfounded. 1 minute we were walking out of the library. The next she was acting like a stranger. What the hell had I done? System, are you sure I get $10 million just for a simple task like this? I heard Paige's voice, clear as day, but her lips hadn't moved. Rest assured, host. Complete the mission, prevent the male lead from entering your family's car, and the $10 million reward is yours. A fawning, robotic voice answered her. System? What the hell was a system? And why could I hear them? Was I hearing her thoughts? Just double-checking. In the world of this book I chose, I really am the super-rich heiress, right? Of course. Just like the summary said, you're the real deal in this world. Top-tier family, doting parents, but you're hopelessly in love with your family's driver's son, Nathaniel Cross. Okay, that's all I need. I know this plotline by heart. The doormat who worships the guy until her family is ruined and she dies alone. All I have to do is pretend I've woken up and put this loser in his place. You can go now. Don't get in the way of my performance. A chill went down my spine. Those weren't Paige's thoughts. Something was wrong. It was dinner time, and the main quad of Blackwood University was crowded. Paige's outburst had drawn a lot of attention. My roommate, Leo, who'd walked out with me, shifted uncomfortably. Paige, come on. Nate's got that conference later. What's all this about? So it's one of those cliché plots where the driver's son uses my money to play the big shot on campus. Pathetic. Paige glared at me, her voice dripping with venom. Oh, Nate the Great. Did you forget? You're my driver's son. What makes you so great? That should put him in his place. God, I'm brilliant. My dad, who was driving today, had been called a driver twice now with the same contemptuous tone. He leaned over. Paige, what's going on? Did you and Nate have a fight? Paige whipped her head around and snapped at him. Mr. Cross, who signed your paychecks? My father. You're here to pick me up. I don't want strangers in my car. Is that a problem? Take me home now, unless you want to be fired. My expression must have been one of calm confusion, because it seemed to infuriate her further. She turned back to me, her chin held high. Nate, great. Starting today, I'm taking back everything that doesn't belong to you. System, I'm crushing this. You should give me a bonus. My dad rolled down the passenger side window and shot me a look. I just shrugged, as bewildered as he was. Nate, he asked, his brow furrowed. You and Evie wanted to call you an Uber? I was still trying to process what she'd said, and the fact that I was hearing her thoughts. I nodded. Letting her continue this scene would just waste more time. Success. System, pay up. As the rolls pulled away, Paige's triumphant face visible in the back window. A freshman walking by stopped. Nate the Great? Why is she making a big deal about you being the driver's son? It's not like it's a secret. I shrugged again. Your guess is as good as mine. Just then my girlfriend, Dr. Evelyn Reed, walked up, pulling a small suitcase. Nate, where's your dad? My hands were still in mid-shrug. Honestly, I have no idea. Paige went on some bizarre rant and had my dad drive her off. Evie frowned. Wasn't he taking us to the biotech forum? Why would he take her? I took her suitcase from her. She said she wanted to go home. Evie looked just as confused as I felt. She's a sophomore. Finals are in a few weeks. Why would she go home instead of hitting the books in her dorm? Evie and I are 5 years older than Paige. We're both in the final year of our PhD programs. She's a sophomore. We all ended up at Blackwood, one of the best medical schools in the country. You could say I was a prodigy. I'd always had a knack for academics. Ever since I was in middle school, the Carringtons, the top-tier family my dad worked for, had taken an interest in me. They saw my potential gave my dad a cushy, high-paying job with flexible hours, and set up an educational fund for me so I could focus on my studies. I didn't let them down. I was valedictorian and got into Blackwood's pre-med program at 16. It was there I met Evie, the cool, brilliant senior who eventually agreed to go out with me. Paige, she was just your average rich girl. Her grades were mediocre. It was only with my tutoring, some strings I pulled with my professors, and a hefty donation from her family that she even got into Blackwood and onto my advisor's research team. She used to follow me around like a puppy, but I always saw her as a little sister. Besides, I've always been into older, more mature women. Once she got to college, she started pursuing me openly. It didn't matter that I told her repeatedly that I had a girlfriend. She never gave up. Because her family had done so much for me, I was a frequent guest at their estate. From the eager looks Mr. and Mrs. Carrington always gave me, I had a pretty good idea why Paige was so persistent. She definitely had a crush on me, but her parents were 10 times more enthusiastic about the idea of me as a son-in-law. I tried to let them down gently, but they just play dumb. Kids these days, they'd say with a shrug. You can't tell them what to do. What could I do? They were my benefactors. I couldn't just burn that bridge. I tried to keep my distance from Paige, figuring that once Evie and I got married, they'd finally get the hint. I told Evie all about it, of course. She was remarkably understanding. You know I'm a clinical surgeon, right? She'd said calmly. If you ever cheat, I know exactly how to slice you up, so the coroner's report reads death by 1,000 paper cuts. Just saying. So yeah, very understanding. She could have made my death look like an accident. Easy. The fact that she was only planning to maim me for life, not kill me, was true love. I was about to call an Uber to get to the conference when my phone rang. It was Mrs. Carrington. Nate, dear, has your father picked you up yet? Robert and I are already at the convention center. I put on my most pathetic voice. Susan, I'm not even in the car. I don't know what's gotten into Paige, but she insisted Dad take her home. Evie and I were just about to grab a ride. I heard a sharp clatter on the other end, followed by muffled voices. It sounded like I was on speakerphone. They were probably showing off to their friends that I was arriving in their car. Mr. Cross, is it? I'll have my driver come get you right away. That sounded like Jackson, the Carringtons' biggest competitor. The line suddenly went quiet, the background noise gone. She'd taken me off speaker. Mrs. Carrington's voice was now sharp with anger and panic. That girl has no sense. Don't call a ride. I'll have your father turn around and get you right now. This conference is too important for her to be causing trouble. She hung up before I could reply. Not even a minute later, the Rolls-Royce was back. Paige got out, her face a mask of resentment. Seeing my faint, knowing smile, she scowled. What did you say to my mother? Why is she so protective of a driver's son? Am I not more important than you? System. Stop playing dead. What the hell is happening? The profile said doting parents. Why did my mom yell at me to give the car to this guy? She even called the driver afterward to make sure. The settings are correct, host. It's possible the male lead simply has a higher favorability rating with your parents. How is that possible? I'm their daughter. He's just the driver's son. I shrugged. It was never about whose son I am. My advisor at Blackwood, Professor Miller, had taken me under his wing and put me on one of his key projects. In the 3 years from undergrad to my master's, our team developed a device that could efficiently extract active medicinal compound from herbal sources. This device could cut the production cost of dozens of traditional remedies by 40% and solve the problem of many treatments needing to be prepared fresh. In other words, any pharmaceutical company that had this tech would dominate the market. And a few years ago, I was the one who suggested to Professor Miller that we sell the patent exclusively to the Carringtons. Carrington Pharma was an old-school company. A few years back, with the market for herbal medicine shrinking, they were on the verge of bankruptcy. My patent brought them back from the dead and catapulted them to the top of the industry. Today's conference was all about me and Evie. Our team's latest research, a new generation of the device, was ready. We were here to present it. This new version could cut production costs down to just 20% of the original. It was revolutionary. At a time like this, unless the Carringtons were complete fools, why would they do anything but kiss the ass of their golden goose? I got in the car, my mind already running through my presentation, ignoring Paige, who was standing on the curb, practically vibrating with rage. Mission failed, host. Penalty. $10 million. What? There's a penalty? You didn't think it was all rewards and no risk, did you? By the way, are you sure you don't want to purchase the strategy guide? These missions can be tricky without one. This plot is so old, I could write it myself. I've been doing this for 10 years. I know exactly what comes next. I'm not wasting money on that. I just didn't expect the social climbing loser is more popular with my parents trope. It must be because I chased him for so long. They started to hate me for it. Damn it, a $10 million loss. As soon as I win back my parents' love, I'll use all our power and money to make that driver's son regret the day he was born. The car pulled away, and her inner voice faded. Once we were alone, I turned to Evie. Babe, I think I can hear Paige's thoughts. Evie's interest was immediately piqued. Really? You wanted to give you a CT scan after the forum? I shot her a look. I'm serious. Not just her thoughts. There's some system talking to her, too. She grinned. Dissociative identity disorder? I've been brushing up on my psychiatry. I can write you a prescription. How many fingers am I holding up? She held up 2 fingers, and I playfully slapped her hand away. Stop it. I really heard it. And it's like she thinks we're in a novel or something. She has missions to complete. Her grin widened. Nate the Great, what did you hear exactly? I repeated what I'd heard from Paige's internal monologue. Evie's playful expression slowly faded. Have you been reading too much of that weird portal fantasy stuff online? Is it messing with your head? Then a flicker of suspicion crossed her face. She was definitely acting strange today, but you're being a little weird, too. Don't tell me you're about to say the plot is forcing you into some kind of redemption arc where you fall for her and break up with me. I rolled my eyes, but something she said caught my attention. What's a portal fantasy? She gave me a crash course in the tropey web novels she sometimes read for fun. Stories about transmigration, systems, and second chances. When she got to the popular trope about a reborn heiress exposing the social climber, who tricked her family, it clicked perfectly with what I'd heard in Paige's head. As Evie talked, she started to see it, too. You know, for a straight-laced science guy, you'd never come up with a joke this elaborate, she said, a little nervously. If you're not kidding, does that mean our world isn't real? I shrugged. The brain in a vat theory has never been disproven. Even if this world is a construct, we're still living in it. We have our own lives. It doesn't change anything. Evie looked thoughtful. Now that you mention it, she does sound exactly like a protagonist from one of those world-hopping stories. Jumping into books, completing missions for money, derailing the plot. She let out a sudden laugh. And I hate to admit it, but you really do fit the social climber trope. Your dad works for her family. You did use their money for school, and she's been chasing you for years while you keep turning her down. I saw the coincidence, too, and laughed. But it doesn't add up. According to your tropes, shouldn't she be the reborn Paige, back for revenge? Why is she a transmigrator from another world? My dad, who had watched Paige grow up, couldn't help but interject from the driver's seat. I don't understand any of this reborn or transmigrating talk you kids are on about. But if someone else is inside her, then where's Paige? Where did she go? I knew something was off when she was screaming like that. You two are geniuses. Can't you figure something out? We're just joking around, Dad. I said, trying to soothe him. Paige is probably just having a bad day. Don't worry about it. But deep down, I was starting to believe Evie's theory. First, Paige's behavior today was completely out of character. And second, I'd always felt there was something not quite right about my life. I knew I was smart, but my entire life had been almost comically smooth. Good-looking, top of my class, successful at everything I tried. Mentors and benefactors seemed to pop up out of nowhere. Beautiful women were inexplicably drawn to me. Even a lab experiment that a senior postdoc had failed at thousands of times, I managed to succeed on my first try through a complete fluke, which is how I got Professor Miller's attention in the first place. Especially the device I've been working on. Its efficiency was terrifyingly high. Based on all existing theory, it shouldn't even be possible. I dabbled in religious and philosophical texts, trying to understand why my life was so blessed. I never found an answer. But if this world was a novel, as the voice in my head suggested, it all made perfect sense. I was the goddamn protagonist. Thinking this, I couldn't stop one corner of my mouth from curling up into a sharp, self-satisfied smirk. After the conference, the Carringtons insisted I come to their estate for dinner to apologize. As we pulled up to the mansion, before we could even get out, Paige came flying out the front door like a homing pigeon, yanking on the car door and cooing, Mommy, Daddy, I miss you so, so much. The sound made both me and Evie cringe. Did their favorability score go up? Can't see it. I slowly lower my window, a polite, professional smile on my face. Paige's expression soured instantly. She stomped over to the driver's side and tapped on my dad's window. When he rolled it down, she looked at him with disgust. Mr. Cross, how dare you bring your son to my home? Leave the car, take your son, and get lost. I never want to see either of you again. Then she turned her arrogant gaze on me. I'm over you. A stray dog on the street is worth more to me now. I expect you to stay out of my sight. If I see you again, I promise you will pay the price. Host, isn't this a bit too aggressive? Didn't you say the mission is a success as long as he doesn't eat at my house tonight? When you're dealing with a scumbag like this, you can't show any weakness. Once I kick him out, I'll have plenty of ways to win back my parents' affection. I listened to her unhinged thoughts and glanced at Mr. Carrington in the back seat. He was so angry he was speechless, his face turning a dark shade of red. He threw open his car door, stepping out as Paige stared in shock. Crack, Mr. Carrington's hand struck Paige's face with a sound that echoed in the quiet driveway. You insolent brat. Is that any way to speak to Nate? Is this my dad? Yes, it is. Paige clutched her cheek, tears instantly welling in her eyes. Dad, I'm your daughter. How could you do this to me? Mr. Carrington's jaw was clenched. And you just remembering that now? After you spent the whole day embarrassing us, dragging our family's name through the mud. Mrs. Carrington, who looked like she was about to have a heart attack, got out of the car and dragged Paige to stand in front of me. You threw a tantrum this afternoon and nearly ruined a major event, and I let it slide. But now you're being vicious to Nate? How'd I raise a daughter like you? Apologize to him. Now, is this my mom? MMHMM. Was I adopted? It feels like the main character is their real child. I'm just a system. I wouldn't know about that. Paige sobbed, crying out for her mother, but Mr. and Mrs. Carrington's faces remained like stone. Finally, defeated, she turned to me, her face a crumpled mess. I'm sorry. I couldn't have cared less. I walked past her and went straight into the mansion. Mr. Carrington hurried after me, explaining that Paige had been in a strange mood lately and hoping I wouldn't take it to heart. Outside, Mrs. Carrington was still tearing into her daughter. Host, your mission is on the verge of complete failure. Are you sure you don't want to buy the strategy guide? Son of a... Fine, I'll buy it. Excellent. The strategy guide package is $10 million. After deducting the $20 million penalty for this failed mission, you now owe the system a total of $40 million, which will be deducted from your past earnings. Nathaniel Cross. I will remember you. What kind of garbage book is this? When I get back, I'm sending the author a box of razor blades. You must be hungry, Nate. I remember you love Mrs. Gable's fish chowder. Come on, let's eat. Listening to Paige's silent, impotent rage from the driveway, I had to cover my mouth to hide my smile. Interesting. It looked like my placid, successful life was finally about to get a little excitement. The rest of the dinner was normal. I focused on the delicious food, soothing the stomach I'd wrecked with late nights and bad coffee during the recent lab crunch. Paige, apparently aware of her new place in the pecking order, was quiet and subdued, her eyes darting nervously toward me. Her inner monologue was a litany of curses against the system for hiding such crucial information before she chose this world. I cheerfully speared a piece of lobster, enjoying the sight of her cautiously picking at her food. I kind of like your rebellious phase better. Can we get that back? Pretty please? After dinner, Mr. and Mrs. Carrington went upstairs, leaving Paige behind. From the look her mother shot her on the way up, it was clear she was expected to offer a proper apology. She reverted to a version of the old Paige I knew, pouting her lips in a cloying, practiced way. Nate, I was wrong. She blushed and reached for my arm. It's that time of the month, and you never pay any attention to me. I just wanted you to look at me. You're just a book-smart nerd. With my years of transmigration experience, you think I can't handle a guy like you? Yep. Still just as annoying as ever. I wasn't going to play along. I pulled my arm away. I don't care about what you said to me today, but you hurt my dad. I want you to call him and apologize. Me? A high and mighty heiress, apologizing to a driver. A flash of venom crossed her eyes, her face a mask of disbelief. I didn't say anything bad about him. I shook my head, my voice firm. I've never been ashamed of being a driver's son. But my father has always been immensely proud that he, a driver, is my father. So if you're actually going to apologize, you should apologize to the person you really hurt. Ridiculous. This world is so patriarchal. My family is this rich, and I can't even say a few words about one of our servants. I started to tell her how much my dad had cared for her over the years, but then I just gave a weary smile. What was the point? She wasn't Paige anymore. She finally made the call. On the other end, I could hear the relief in my dad's voice. In her head, she was muttering about how she'd make all of us lowlifes pay one day. Later, my dad called me, his voice still low. Nate, you're a grown man now, so successful. Maybe it's time for me to just retire. Work my whole life, and for what? My dad wasn't a sophisticated man. He was just a normal, hard-working, slightly beaten-down father. But I wasn't a normal son anymore. Ever since I became valedictorian, he'd started paying more attention to how he dressed, worried he would embarrass me. Today, Paige, the girl he'd watched grow up, had used his job to attack his beloved son. A hollow apology over the phone wasn't going to erase that kind of hurt. I didn't see her for a while after that. Mr. and Mrs. Carrington, probably terrified she'd say something else insane, kept her home from school. Evie and I were busy running stress tests on the new device and preparing the research papers. Life was so hectic I almost forgot Paige existed. Until one day, I stopped by Professor Miller's office and found her there. Professor Miller, she was saying sweetly, this is a youth center I recently personally funded in an underserved community. I was hoping you could come to the ribbon-cutting ceremony next week. A distinguished professor like you attending would really help the project get more local support. That's a wonderful thing, Paige. I'll certainly be there. With great privilege comes great responsibility. It's commendable that you have such a generous heart. She stood beside his desk where photos and documents were spread out. The professor, peering through his reading glasses, was nodding, clearly impressed. My advisor was a man with a deep sense of social responsibility. He donated a huge portion of his own income to charity and constantly preached to us about giving back. So this was her new angle. She was trying to build a philanthropic persona to get on Professor Miller's good side. It's working. Once I max out my favorability with Professor Miller, my family won't need Nate Cross as a middleman anymore. Then we'll see how he acts so high and mighty around me. Her eyes were dark with scheming, but her voice was pure sugar. New mission: humiliate the male lead in front of Professor Miller and receive $40 million. I do it for free. I can't stand broke guys who act like they're hot shit. I pushed open the door to the office. The moment Paige saw me, she launched into her performance. Well, if it isn't Nate the Great. To what do we owe the honor? Oh, busy one. Nate the Great. The strategy guide said Professor Miller despises phonies and frauds. The original Paige's memories say everyone started calling him that in college. He's a driver's son, an academic. He must have been using my family's money to pretend he was rich. Once Professor Miller finds out, his opinion of Nate will plummet. Her saccharine, sarcastic tone was so transparent it was almost funny. Ignorance isn't a sin, but flaunting it is just embarrassing. Professor Miller, hearing Paige's tone, didn't ask about the nickname as she'd hoped. Instead, he just laughed. You're right about that. Nate the Great is a busy man. Spends all his time with that brilliant girlfriend of his. He's all but forgotten about this lonely old man. I placed a stack of the latest test results on his desk. Professor, you wound me. I've practically been living in the lab. Check the keycard logs. Now that the tests are done, you're the first person I came to see. Seeing that not only did the professor not care about the nickname, but that the famously serious man used it himself, Paige's composure cracked. Professor Miller, do you know about Nate's family situation? She asked, testing the waters. It must be that Nate has been pretending to be a rich kid since before he even started here. The reveal will be even more dramatic. Professor Miller frowned. I'm very familiar with Nate's background. Why do you ask? Paige put on a hesitant, concerned expression, the perfect picture of a reluctant truth-teller. She took a deep breath as if steeling herself. Well, Nate's father is our driver. His family is quite poor. I just feel it's not right for him to be pretending to be some great young master in front of you. Before she could finish, Professor Miller cut her off. As I said, I am well aware of his family situation. Nate the Great is just a term of endearment. What exactly are you trying to say, Paige? Paige was stunned that her bombshell had been a dud. The thought of losing another $40 million made her blurt out her real feelings. Then why does he, a driver's son who only went to school on my family's money, get to call himself great? I watched Professor Miller's face darken. Still, he kept his voice polite. Paige, I have some things to discuss with Nate. Could you please step outside? Paige's face flushed red, then went pale. She stood frozen, wanting to argue, but I delivered the final blow. Paige, you should go. The professor and I really do have work to discuss. You wouldn't understand it anyway, so it's better if you're not here. Professor Miller added one last thing. I will attend the ribbon cutting for the youth center, but I suggest you take some time to learn what philanthropy is really about. Then you might understand why even I call your senior Nate the Great. With that, he turned his back on her as if she were invisible. Warning: Professor Miller's favorability has dropped to 0. Your mission has failed. Penalty: $40 million. No. Why? What is he talking about? I bought the strategy guide. Why do I still feel like I know nothing? The guide is based on the original host's memories. There may be things the original host did not know. That's not fair. Give me my money back. The system went silent again. Watching the color drain from Paige's face, I had to wonder how these transmigrators ever managed to succeed at anything. Professor Miller gave me a look, and I gently guided Paige out of the office. She tried to get back in, but I shut the door and leaned against it. Outside, she was having a silent, furious meltdown, mentally cursing every single person in this world with equal venom. Professor Miller glanced at me, shaking his head. I never realized that girl was so manipulative. If you hadn't insisted, I never would have accepted such an entitled brat onto my team. Listening to her uncreative internal curses, I let out a laugh. I wouldn't call it manipulative. At best, she's just a little slow. The whole Nate the Great thing was Leo's fault, really. He was a year behind me. When he first moved into our dorm suite, he was a ghost, avoiding all of us, never joining in on anything. Then another roommate found out his mom was seriously ill, and that Leo was surviving solely on scholarships and part-time jobs. We'd see him in the dining hall with a bowl of free soup and a pile of plain rice. It was heartbreaking, but he never said a word about his struggles. He was too proud. Helping him directly was out of the question. So I came up with a plan that would let him accept our help without feeling like a charity case. I bought a few gaudy, knockoff designer sweatshirts with huge logos and encouraged my roommates to start calling me Nate the Great. I leaned into the role, acting like an entitled rich kid, complaining loudly about everything. It worked. Leo started to get curious. My other roommates would pull him aside and comply about me. How I was this rich, obnoxious guy with a fragile ego who would throw money around to show off, and how you had to humor him or he'd get pissed. Once the stage was set, I swaggered into our common room one day and announced, "All right, everyone, hand over your meal cards." Since the others all complied, Leo hesitantly passed his over too. The three of us each chipped in and loaded his card with $3,000, enough to feed him for a year at the campus dining halls. I handed the cards back with a flourish. "You're all a bunch of paupers," I declared, "and I will not allow a roommate of Nate the Great to have less than $3,000 on his meal card." I even struck a proud pose. Leo looked mortified. The money was on the card. He couldn't get it back. As he was trying to figure out how to repay me, my other roommates swarmed him. "Dude, just take it. If he wants to give it, let him. We've been dealing with this all year. Don't give it back. The psycho will actually get mad at you. Seriously, be careful. If you try to pay him back, he'll think you're disrespecting him and make your life hell. The guy's a total jerk, but he's loaded. He won't miss the money. We just humor the idiot and get some free meals out of it. It's a win-win." He was finally convinced. He desperately needed the money for his mom's treatment. And because we'd spent weeks painting me as a spoiled brat who didn't know the value of a dollar, he felt he could accept it without sacrificing his pride. From then on, we'd all chip in for pizza and beer or tickets to a game and just say it was Nate the Great's treat. I even pretended to pull some strings to get him into my lab, telling him he was there to assist me, when really I just gave him simple tasks he could handle. By the time I finished my master's and he graduated from undergrad, his mother's treatment had been successful. She was going to be okay. He'd cut back on work, focused on his studies, and, following in my footsteps, was chosen as his class's student speaker at commencement. On stage, he found me in the crowd, smiled, and then began to tell a story about Nate the Great. He said our plan was clumsy, that from the very beginning he could tell I didn't look down on him at all. He knew my grades, my academic achievements. He knew I could never be that kind of brainless rich kid. But he really needed the money, so he played along. I am truly grateful to Nate the Great, he said, his voice ringing through the auditorium. Without him, I don't know if I would have made it to graduation. Nate the Great wasn't actually rich. His big treats were usually a cheap pot of chili for all of us. But it was his constant fake generosity that got me through these 4 years. I want to thank the roommates who talked trash about him behind his back, and I want to thank Nate the Great, who quietly put up with all of it. His speech became the talk of the campus, and from that day on, I had a new nickname. Unfortunately for the new Paige, the original Paige had enrolled after that graduation. She was genuinely fond of me. She would never have cared about a silly nickname. Over the years, I used the money I earned from my research to do a lot of charity work. Leo was part of that, too. When he got his first big bonus from our project, he tried to pay me back. I told him to just donate it instead. So he used the money to start the Nate the Great Foundation online, a nonprofit dedicated to funding education for underprivileged kids. If Paige had actually done the work to set up that youth center herself, she would have known about our foundation. She would have seen Leo's story, which was featured prominently on the homepage. But of course she hadn't. She just had someone else do the work and slapped her name on it. Such messy details were beneath an heiress like her. What she didn't know was that Professor Miller came from a poor background. As a young man, he'd been exploited and looked down on by the wealthy. The one thing he couldn't stand was an arrogant, entitled rich person who looked down on others. Unfortunately for Paige, she had just checked every single box on his list. Paige pretty much stopped going to class. After missing so many sessions, Professor Miller kicked her off the research team. My life went on as usual. Run experiments, write papers. In my downtime, I read up on those portal fantasy novels Evie had mentioned. I learned that transmigrators like her often had a series of missions to complete. I was curious. If she was avoiding me, how was she going to complete her tasks? I soon found out. When I went to the Carrington Pharma headquarters to drop off some documents, I was stopped at the door. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cross. The chairman has instructed us not to allow you on the premises." I raised an eyebrow at the new security guard. Interesting. She was making her move. I didn't argue. I just pulled out my phone and called Mr. Carrington. The call didn't go through. He blocked my number. Same with Mrs. Carrington. Just then, Evie called, her voice tight with anxiety. "Nate, you need to get online. Now." I didn't have to look. The notifications were already blowing up my screen. Breaking. Famed medical researcher accused of academic fraud. Shock. Scandal rocks top university. Exclusive. The dark underbelly of medical research revealed. I clicked on one of the articles. It was a video. The stars were Paige and a former student from my lab, a guy who'd been kicked out years ago. The video was a masterpiece of melodrama. The ex-student, Mark Stevens, tearfully accused me and Professor Miller of stealing his research. Paige added her own testimony, claiming we bullied her in the lab and forced her to do all the menial work. I scrolled through the comments. It was a dogpile. Aside from a few students from Blackwood who knew me, everyone was calling for my head. The power of public opinion was terrifying. My DMs were a toxic waste dump. My phone number had been leaked and was ringing off the hook. Worst of all, a mob had organized a mass report the Nate the Great Foundation, my nonprofit, for fraud. In this world, the first person to shout is the one who's believed. I knew of this guy, Mark Stevens. We'd never met, but I'd heard the story. The only reason I got into Professor Miller's lab as a sophomore was because Stevens had been fired for selling lab data on the side, leaving a sudden opening. What's this stray dog doing hanging around our company? Security, get him out of here. I looked up from my phone. Paige was standing there, arms crossed, a smug, triumphant look on her face. I glanced at the guards advancing on me and just smiled. "Trust me," I said quietly. "You and the Carringtons are going to regret this." Then I turned and walked away. I never make a move until I'm absolutely certain I can win. Congratulations, host. Mission: prevent the male lead from entering the company complete. Reward of $80 million has been issued. Oof. Don't congratulate me. I've barely paid off my debt. Nathaniel Cross. I will make you regret crossing me for the rest of your miserable life. I glanced back at the gleaming Carrington Pharma Tower. Without me, that building would still belong to some other company. I was genuinely curious to see what they try next. Back on campus, I went straight to Professor Miller. He was furious. It's such a blatant lie. And can you believe it? Several of your senior lab mates came to me and demanded I fire you. When I refused, they quit the team on the spot. These were postdocs. I could guess what happened. Paige had offered them lucrative senior positions at Carrington Pharma. I had to admit, this transmigrator wasn't a complete idiot. She knew how to dismantle an enemy from within. The only thing that puzzled me was how she was pulling it off. Paige had no authority at Carrington Pharma. She must have had her parents' help. Why would they go along with this insanity? Didn't they remember that without the exclusive patent I gave them, their company would be bankrupt? And that the new patent was exponentially more valuable? Were they really willing to burn this bridge, knowing I could just give it to their competitors? The story was raging online. Many of my professors and classmates posted videos and comments defending me, but they were drowned out. Professor Miller recorded a video statement, clearly explaining why Mark Stevens was fired and pointing out that the patent in question was based on my ideas, developed long after Stevens was gone. He even posted the official police report from Stevens' case and Paige's lab work schedule, which consisted mostly of ordering lunch. But the Carringtons were clearly spending a fortune. A day later, our videos had barely made a ripple, while theirs were still trending. Professor Miller scowled. We have to call the police. This is slander. Our evidence is ironclad. They will pay for this. Calling the police was a given, but I was more interested in their endgame. Did they really think they could get away with this and not partner with us on a new device? Just then, Evie rushed in, her face grim. Nate, there was a backdoor on the lab computer. The experimental data has been stolen. She showed me a security clip on her phone. In it, a shadowy figure, clearly Paige, was furtively plugging a flash drive into our main server. I nodded, told her not to worry, and added it to our police report. I opened Paige's social media. As expected, she'd posted a new video. The title read, Dr. Mark Stevens and team sign long-term deal with Carrington Pharma for new revolutionary technology. The comments were full of paid trolls and bots, spamming things like, finally, a company that supports real scientists, and good riddance to those academic thieves. Seeing that headline was actually a huge relief. Evie was panicking. They could file for the patent first. If they succeed, even if we win a lawsuit later, they'll just pay a fine and own our research for years. I shook my head. You're a surgeon. You don't get the business side of this. Have you ever wondered why, after all this time, we still haven't filed the patent for a finished product? Paige was a transmigrator, but she was still just an ordinary person with a bit of inside information. She didn't understand business, and she definitely didn't understand research and development. When she first posted that video, I'll admit I was nervous. I was worried the system might have given her some kind of mind control ability, forcing her parents to go along with her. If she could just keep turning people against me, things could get very messy. But now I saw her plan. She stole the data, teamed up with the disgraced and desperate Mark Stevens, and was trying to pass off our work as his. The online smear campaign was just cover, a way to publicly legitimize their theft and minimize the damage to the Carrington brand. It was a plan far too sophisticated for her underdeveloped brain. This had her parents' fingerprints all over it. Businessmen are driven by profit. The chance to save billions in patent fees and royalties was too tempting for them to resist. And since we hadn't filed the patent yet, they thought they could legally hijack our discovery. It was a dirty move, but a profitable one. The Carringtons would get richer, and the nearly bankrupt Mark Stevens would get his career back. But they'd overlooked one crucial detail. There was a very good reason we hadn't filed the patent yet. Paige invited me and Professor Miller to the Carrington estate to negotiate. We walked in calmly. Ha ha ha, this feels so good. So good. Thank God the original Paige was organized enough to back up all the lab data. It made stealing it so much easier. Congratulations, host. A new main quest has arrived. If you can make the male lead slap himself in the face at this dinner, you will receive a reward of $200 million. Huh, slap himself? That's too lenient. This lowlife cost me $80 million. I'm going to make him kneel and beg for my forgiveness. I'm going to grind his bones to dust. I heard her vicious thoughts, before we even stepped through the door. The moment we did, the venom came pouring out of her mouth. Get on your knees and apologize, or I'll ruin your life forever. She was perched on a high-back chair, legs crossed, chin tilted up so far she was practically looking at the ceiling. I held up a hand to stop Professor Miller from exploding. I said only one thing. We've already called the police. Paige froze. How is that possible? No one calls the police in a novel. I knew it. There was no way she orchestrated something this complex. Her brain was still stuck on cartoon logic. Mr. Carrington, probably aware of how unreliable his daughter was, emerged from his study to break the tense silence. Ahem, he cleared his throat. Gentlemen, I asked you here today primarily to discuss the termination of our contract for the previous product at the end of the year. We had a private agreement to give them exclusive rights to the new patent, so of course they wouldn't be renewing the old one. Professor Miller sneered. Stole the new model, so you don't need the old one anymore. Makes sense. Mr. Carrington, a veteran of countless business battles, was unfazed. What I'd like to discuss, Professor, is the possibility of renewing the contract, but under revised terms. He was careful not to mention the stolen data, probably worried we were recording him. Professor Miller was about to retort, but I stopped him. Mr. Carrington, I asked, what kind of revised terms did you have in mind? He smiled. I'm prepared to offer you a one-time payment of $10 million to buy out the patent entirely. Professor Miller scoffed. Absolutely not. The annual royalties alone are more than $100 million. How dare you even suggest such a number? Mr. Carrington put on a pained, magnanimous expression. I'm trying to help you. I've already acquired a superior technology from Dr. Stevens. Your device is obsolete. Even if you try to sell it elsewhere, you wouldn't get this much. And with your current reputation online, well, I'm worried that patent will be worthless. I was tired of playing games. Let's cut to the chase, Mr. Carrington. Give me a real offer. He shook his head sadly. Nate, it hurts me to hear you talk like this. After all our years together. But if you insist, $100 million, a complete buyout of your previous patent. If our new device hit the market, the old patent would be worth a fraction of that. This price had to come with strings attached. As if on cue, Mr. Carrington continued. Once the contract is signed, the patent becomes our property. How we choose to handle it and how we market it is our business. We would expect you to drop this nonsense with the police. You must withdraw your complaint. Perhaps giddy with his perceived victory, he added, even if you did sue, the damages you'd win wouldn't be this much. On top of the $100 million, I'm also willing to provide your lab with an annual research grant of $5 million. Think about it. A clever trap. If we agreed, they could slander us with impunity, destroying our reputations forever. They could even countersue us for academic fraud and try to claw back all their past royalty payments. $100 million was more than we'd get in a simple lawsuit, but the long-term consequences would be devastating. He slid a contract across the table. Professor Miller, Dr. Cross. Sign it. It's your only chance for a future. Professor Miller slapped the contract onto the floor. I would rather die than sign that piece of filth. Mr. Carrington's face hardened. Professor, you've taken quite a beating online these past few days. Believe me, if you don't sign this today, no other pharmaceutical company will ever work with your lab again. He adopted a sorrowful tone. You've made your fortune. You can retire. But what about Nate? The boy hasn't even finished his PhD yet. You have to think of your students' futures. Paige chose that moment to jump in. That's too good for them. I want Nathaniel Cross to get on his knees and slap himself 100 times. Otherwise, we won't sign. Mr. Carrington looked annoyed, but probably feeling he owed Paige for her contribution, he simply sighed. Nate's had it too easy his whole life. A little humility wouldn't hurt him. I looked at the father and daughter who thought they had me cornered and let that signature smirk spread across my face. Tell me, I said, have you two managed to build a working prototype from the stolen data? The expressions on their faces froze. Mr. Carrington shot a look at his daughter. Paige, fearing she was being doubted again, blurted out, It's fine. Mark looked at it. He said it's fine. And when I stole, he said it should be fine, right? Isn't that the same as being fine? Mr. Carrington quickly cut off her confession. We have our own experts, he said, his confidence returning. They've confirmed the new device is viable. It's only a slight variation on the first generation. There's no reason it shouldn't work. Just as the words left his mouth, Mrs. Carrington strode into the room, her face ashen. She forced a tight, brittle smile. Nate, dear, why must we be so confrontational? Your girlfriend is here. Let's all sit down, have some dinner, and talk this over. I had plans with Evie. The last thing I wanted was to eat at their table. Mrs. Carrington, is there a problem with the prototype? Is it possible that the medicine it's producing has zero active ingredients? Professor Miller, recovering his composure, let out a booming laugh. Do you take us for fools? Why do you think we never filed a patent on a finished product? The new device is still in the calibration phase. What you stole is a half-finished shell. It's less effective than the first generation. I smiled. It seems you stole a very beautiful, very empty box. You can probably get a design patent for its appearance, I suppose. But the actual core technology, the part we just finished developing, is what we'll be filing our research patent for. These people didn't understand R&D. They only cared about results. Did they really think I wouldn't take precautions against a transmigrator who was actively trying to ruin me? From the day of the conference, I've been running all critical simulations on my personal IR-gapped laptop. The data on the lab server was an elaborate decoy, a structural framework with all the key variables and core processes removed. Even if I hadn't, it wouldn't have mattered. A device this complex requires months, even years, of fine-tuning and calibration to work at an industrial scale. The data they stole was like a pile of bricks. You can't turn that into a house overnight. Even for a major company like Carrington Pharma, without our preliminary research, it would take them 5 years at minimum to get a working model into production. By then, we'd be on our third-generation device. Mr. and Mrs. Carrington looked like they'd swallowed poison. I pulled the expedited research patent and the new design patent from my briefcase and slapped them on the table. Mr. Carrington picked them up, his hands shaking. Nate, he stammered, his voice weak. I was forced into this, son. It was the board of directors. I never wanted this. Mrs. Carrington squeezed out a few tears, her powerful demeanor gone. Nate, please, think of everything we've done for you. Forgive us just this once. I laughed, a cold, sharp sound. I have never forgotten your help. When your company was on the brink of collapse, I put my own reputation on the line to convince Professor Miller to give you the exclusive license that saved this family. I have repaid my debt to you, but it seems my contributions to you mean nothing. Mr. Carrington collapsed into a chair. If we don't get the exclusive license for the second-gen device, our stock will be wiped out. Professor Miller laughed again. You knew the consequences, and you did it anyway. And your daughter was foolish enough to leave a mountain of evidence. When the police release their report, Carrington Pharma won't just see its stock plummet. It'll be delisted. Mrs. Carrington seemed to have a nervous breakdown, sinking to her knees. We were blinded by greed. Nate, please forgive us this one time. She grabbed the stunned, catatonic Paige and forced her to the floor. It was all her idea. I'll make her apologize to you. What are they talking about? I don't understand. Host, I'm a system, not a generative AI. I don't know what he's talking about either. All I know is that you're about to fail again. No, impossible. Please no. I'm out of money. My savings from 10 whole years. Your current balance is $80 million. You have not only lost all your savings, you are now $120 million in debt. No, this mission was a lie. This wasn't a bonus stage. You cheated me. You stole 10 years of my blood, sweat, and tears. No. Paige muttered, her eyes vacant. Suddenly, her head snapped up, her face twisted with pure rage. She tore herself from her mother's grasp, and in a blur of motion, pulled a gleaming dagger from her waistband and lunged at me. I watched her insane charge with cold detachment, sidestepped the clumsy attack, and brought the edge of my hand down sharply on the back of her neck. Honestly, it was absurd. You're a normal human. What makes you think you can win a physical fight against the protagonist? As Paige crumpled to the floor, I heard the system's voice, now speaking to no one in particular. Silly host, killing the male lead was the final hidden mission. Now that has failed, adding another billion-dollar penalty. You now owe us $1.1 billion. I can't believe how easy it was to reclaim the bonus payments. If only every host were this stupid. Then the voice shifted, becoming a flat, robotic monotone. Mission total failure. Logout system enabled. Awaiting host to voluntarily exit this world. Mission total failure. Logout system enabled. Awaiting host to voluntarily exit this world. Mission total failure. Logout system enabled. Awaiting host to voluntarily exit this world. I looked down at Paige, sleeping so peacefully on the floor, and almost felt sorry for her. Mr. and Mrs. Carrington were stunned into silence by their daughter's attempted murder. In this day and age, normal people don't just pull out a knife and try to kill someone. They hire people to do that secretly. Then, a new realization dawned on them. Their daughter had just escalated their conflict with me from a business dispute to a blood feud. They were both frozen, unsure of what to say. I glanced at Professor Miller. He was pale, but nodded at me. We had planned for every contingency. Victory was never in doubt. I brushed a wrinkle from my shirt. It seems, I said calmly, that Miss Carrington has been feeling a little unwell lately. Mr. and Mrs. Carrington latched onto the excuse like a lifeline. Yes, that's it. She's insane. Everything that happened was because she's gone mad. I guided them gently. But Madwoman couldn't have orchestrated all this on her own. It must have been that Mark Stevens fellow who put her up to it. Mr. Carrington slammed his hand on the table. Exactly. He manipulated all of us. Mrs. Carrington chimed in, her voice shrill. We'll release a statement immediately. The whole thing was a setup by Mark Stevens. He lied to us, claimed the technology was his. We were victims, too. Don't forget the public apology. I reminded them. You can't slander people without facing consequences. Mr. Carrington nodded so vigorously he looked like a bobblehead. An apology? Yes, of course. We'll buy the top trending spot on Twitter to clear your names. He then looked at me, his eyes pleading. So, we can still work together, right? I shrugged. I never said we couldn't. We just need to revise the terms. I pulled another contract from my briefcase and slid it over to them with a smile. Mr. Carrington's hands trembled as he read it. 30% of the company's stock? He gasped. My family doesn't even own that much. Mrs. Carrington's voice shook. You're asking us to sell you the entire company. The board will never approve this. My face was impassive. You play the game, you accept the stakes. In the end, we got our 30% stake in Carrington Pharma. Every shareholder knew that without our technology, their stock would be worthless. Faced with losing everything or giving up a piece of the pie, the choice was obvious, especially since we held all the cards. I watched the video of a tearful Mark Stevens apologizing for deceiving everyone. It was everywhere. Combined with the official police statement, my reputation was fully restored. The internet mob, having forgotten how they'd savaged me just days before, now turned their fury on him. Paige, of course, was thrown to the wolves. She was committed to a psychiatric hospital with little chance of ever getting out. Soon, the news of our lab's partnership with Carrington Pharma went public, sending the company's stock soaring. Everyone made a fortune. It was a happy ending for all. With our own company backing us, our lab's research accelerated. We revitalized traditional medicine, and soon we were crushing our competitors, practically taking over the global market. 3 years later, I took my wife, Evie, to the hospital where Paige was being held. When we asked to see her, the nurse hesitated. This patient's condition, it's not good. Are you sure she's the one you want to visit? What's wrong with her? I asked. The nurse sighed. She's extremely unstable. Says the strangest things. She assaulted one of my colleagues last week. I had a pretty good idea of what that meant. She was probably in restraints. It's fine, I said. We weren't that close. The nurse understood and led me to her room. Even before we got there, I could hear her thoughts. Mission total failure. Logout system enabled. Please, host voluntarily exit this world. I'm not leaving. I'm Paige Carrington, the heiress. I'm not going back to the real world to pay off your debt. You scam artists. I worked for 10 years across dozens of worlds, and now I owe you $1 billion? I'm going to live out my life as an heiress right here. Mission total failure. Logout system enabled. Please, host voluntarily exit this world. I won't. The thing is, she wasn't insane when they first brought her here. But with that system notification repeating in her head every 10 seconds for 3 straight years, Anyone would go mad. I opened the door. The room was private. The Carringtons could at least afford that. She was, as I'd suspected, strapped securely to the bed. She was skeletal, her hair dry and matted against her waxy, pale skin. Her eyes bulged, wide with a frantic, caged animal pain. When she saw it was me, she went still, and tears began to stream down her face. I gestured for the nurse to leave us. The nurse, recognizing me, saw the patient was calm and discreetly backed out of the room. Paige's voice was quiet, full of practiced remorse. Nate, I'm so sorry. I only did those things because I loved you so much. I've been in here for 3 years. My parents don't even visit. Please, can you talk to them? Ask them to take me home. I'm begging you. I don't want anything else. I'll just live out my days here. I'm still an heiress. I'm going to have a good life. I don't want anything else. I'll just live out my days here. I'm still an heiress. I'm going to have a good life. I repeated aloud. Paige's eyes widened in horror as she realized I was speaking her thoughts. Mind reading? You knew all along, didn't you? You were playing me this whole time. The mask was off. She started screaming at me, pure rage in her voice. Snot ran from her nose, making her furious expression look both pathetic and ridiculous. I couldn't help it. I laughed. That broke her completely. She looked like a clown whose final act had fallen flat. Nate the Great, please, she begged, her voice now a desperate whisper. Everything I did, the system made me do it. Let me go. I just want to live out my life as Paige Carrington. That's all I ask. It was fascinating. You'd never see such a purely pathetic spectacle in the real world. She kept talking about how miserable she was, how humble her request. But I only had one question for her. What's your name? She blinked. I'm Paige Carrington. I shook my head. Paige Carrington is my friend. My sister. You're just a thief who stole 3 years of her life. The woman's expression froze, then twisted into a wild, cackling grin. Ha 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 ha. So what? As long as I don't leave, I'll always be Paige Carrington. She looked at me with defiance. Or you could let me kill you. My debt would be paid, and I could leave. Otherwise, what are you doing here, playing the noble big brother? It's disgusting. Evie opened the bag she'd brought and handed me a small bowl and a vial of dark liquid. I poured the vial into the bowl and walked over to the bed. Paige, I said, my voice gentle, don't be afraid. For a minor illness like this, a little traditional medicine is all you need. Seeing my smile, the woman, the thief, panicked. She thrashed against her restraints, but they held firm. I couldn't allow someone with such a primitive, feudal mindset to exist in my world. I pinched her nose, forced her mouth open, and poured the medicine down her throat, preparing to exit world. 10, 9, 8, no. She let out a final, agonizing scream and then went limp. Mr. and Mrs. Carrington rushed in, drawn by the noise. Is she okay? Evie and I shared a smile. We had worked on this formula for a long time. It was perfectly reliable. Slowly, the young woman on the bed began to stir. Her expression was peaceful. I couldn't hear her thoughts anymore. She looked at me, her eyes, the real Paige's eyes, filling with tears. Nate, she whispered, I'm so sorry.